right, what is up, PT on Ice Daily Crew? We got Facebook over here, we got Instagram over here. I'm Dr. Mark Gallant, coming at you live on Clinical Tuesday, faculty member of the Ice Extremity Division alongside Lindsay Huey and Eric Chacones. To everyone that joined us out in Seattle over the past weekend, we just had an absolute blast. That is just a stellar clinic. There's no doubt that those individuals are getting results out there. So we had a super fun time hanging out with all of you. Just a couple housekeeping things before we get started. We've got Jeff heading down to Atlanta to teach lumbar management coming up this weekend. And then the following weekend, I believe he's out in Anchorage, Alaska. So he's trying to set some sort of airplane mileage record over the next couple weeks. And then February 20th and 21st, we have the fitness athlete crew heading down to Louisiana. Sorry about that. Little camera difficulty there. One second. Good, and we're back. Good, so like I said, we've got the fitness athlete crew heading down to Louisiana there. And then all of our online courses are up and running right now. So if you haven't already signed up for one of our online courses, be on the lookout on the website to hit us the next round later in the spring. So what I want to talk to you all about today is tendinopathy loading, and specifically how speed relates to tendinopathy loading. So I think we can all agree at this point that loading is an essential component to our rehabilitation of any tissue, but it's especially important when we're looking at tendon issues. We've got a bunch of research over the last 15, 20 years that shows it doesn't really matter. We need to load them either isometrically, eccentrically, or concentrically. And we're going to do this based on the patient's irritability and based on the presentation in front of us. So we're not just choosing isometrics, concentrics, eccentrics willy-nilly. We have to look at the individual in front of us. So if that person comes in with a lot of irritability on board, a lot of fear on board, it may be beneficial for us to start with isometrics, right? We know that those are going to load them in a way where it doesn't create a lot of fear because they're rather static. It's not going to force the tendon to interact with its environment and be jumping all over the place. So they're a really nice starting point. We've got research from Ebony Rio in 2015 that shows we really need to be loading these heavy. So if you're going to do your isometrics with your individuals, make sure that you're loading them at least 70% of their 1 rep max on that isometric. In addition to what Ebony Rio shows is we have to load these people for a long time. We need the appropriate amount of time under tension to really get moving with these things. So what they recommend is 5 repetitions for 45 seconds every day for those first few weeks when you're using your isometrics. So quite a bit of time under tension there. Now when you're moving on to your concentrics and eccentrics, we of course have the classic Alfredson protocol from 1998 with the Achilles tendinopathies. And what this showed us was we've got to really give these tendons volume. So the Alfredson protocol, for any of you that aren't familiar with it, he recommended 3 sets of 15 of both straight leg and bent knee eccentric heel raises off of a stair twice a day, every day for a 3-month period. So quite a bit of volume there. And then Bayer came along a handful of years later and said, well, maybe we don't have to hit them every day if we're really loading them up heavy enough with concentrics. And so what Bayer et al. Looked at was, let's do it 3 times a week. Let's start out doing 3 sets of 15 reps, but it has to be their 15 rep max. So if they can do more than 15, you're not loading them heavy enough. Once they can do that, we're going to hit them for 3 sets of 12 reps 3 times a week, but it has to be the 12 rep max. Then progressing on to 4 sets of 10, 4 sets of 8, down to 4 sets of their 6 rep max. So by the end of that 3 months on the Bayer protocol, you're really loading them at a pretty significant amount of vigor and load. But let's think about Brian. So Brian is a high school soccer player. Brian's going into his junior year. He's a pretty competitive soccer player, so he's really looking at getting some scholarships to play soccer. And as we all know, that junior year is really kind of where the college coaches are really taking a good, strong look. But Brian's been dealing with some nagging Achilles tendinopathy over the last 6 months since the last soccer season ended. So he decides that he's going to come in and see you and try to get checked out so that he can really, really hit it hard for his junior and senior year and see if he can get one of those scholarships. If you load Brian with isometrics at first, and then get into either those eccentrics or heavy concentrics before he starts soccer season, and you stop there, what always happens to Brian? As soon as Brian starts running, cutting, jumping, really loading his tendon up dynamically, he's right back in your clinic, right? Because we never had that tendon adapt to the speed and velocity that Brian's sport and athletics come equipped with. So if we have those Brians coming into our clinic, and at 12 weeks we just say, hey man, you're hitting all of your loading protocols at the amount you need. You're discharged from physical therapy. Your regular asterisk signs improved. You're hitting all these loading protocols. Time to move on. That person is never going to make a full recovery. They're always going to wind back up in your clinic. And that's why we really need to focus on speed. It's really fascinating what happens to tendons from a loading perspective when you look at speed. So we've looked at the patellar tendon, and this is really crazy. When you load a patellar tendon on a leg squat, a leg press machine with those leg press squats at 3 times your body weight, the actual patellar tendon is going to be loaded at about 5 times your body weight. So there's 5 times body weight tensile stress going through that patellar tendon. That is relatively equivalent to when you land from a jump. When you land from a jump, the patellar tendon is going to take on about 5 times your body weight of load. And the same as when you land from a stop jump. So imagine you're sprinting down a basketball court or you're sprinting down the tennis court and you stop on a dime in that landing. Your patellar tendon is going to take on about 5 times body weight loading. But when we add speed into the equation, body weight per second, we see that the jumping and landing goes up exponentially. So the leg press, the patellar tendon is going to stay with about that 5 times body weight when we add a speed component in. But when we look at body weight per second on that jump landing, it's going to be about 36 times body weight. And when we look at an aggressive jump stop landing like you would see in basketball, tennis, or most of our sports, it's going to be 90 body weights per second. So that body weight per second is really aggressive compared to just our eccentric, concentric, long hold loads that we traditionally do in physical therapy. Furthermore, when we look at the Achilles tendon, just doing a single leg heel raise, so just going up and down on your heel, that's going to be about 3 times your body weight of tensile force going through the Achilles tendon. Now, when we look at running winds up being about 10 times body weight going through your Achilles tendon tensile force, which is a little bit different, but not drastically. But when we look at body weight per second and someone's running at 7 meters per second, that bumps up to 136 plus body weights per second. Again, so going exponentially through the roof. So it doesn't make sense that we would expect these tendons to be able to handle that type of load and speed if we don't equally train that. So when you're working with the Bryans of the world, you have to add a speed component in some part of your plan of care to make sure that they can handle those types of loads. For the Achilles tendon, what this is going to look like is adding in your single leg hops, some jumping, some deficit jumps, maybe hitting some jump roping with some double unders, and progressively loading that the same way you would your strength component. So maybe on day 1, they do 20 single leg hops. And then you progress over the course of the next 2 to 3 weeks to months of, okay, now we're going to hit 120 double unders. We're going to hit 200 double unders, and building that up the same way you would your strength program. For the upper extremity, maybe it's your baseball thrower. You're going to start them out with some long throws where that arm is going to come through a big range of motion, but not necessarily at a high level of speed, and progress them to shorter throwing with a lot more velocity that's really going to force those posterior cuff tendons to handle quite a bit of speed. If we're working with our medial and lateral elbow people, one of my favorite ones is to do bar drops. So they're holding the barbell up like this, and they let the barbell free fall, and then they have to catch it. The barbell free falls, and then they have to catch it. You can do that pronated or supinated, but we have to add that speed component so that when the person goes back to the rigors of their daily life that are going to have the speed component, they have already been trained in a progressive manner. Cool. We'd love to hear your comments about that, what you guys are doing to incorporate speed training into your program. Hit us up. We can't wait to see you guys on the road and hope that you guys have a great Tuesday.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.